Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get going this evening, I wanted to make an announcement. The Falmouth Senior Center is having a public forum, and this is to start planning now for the future. And this public forum is on May the 29th from 2 to 5:30 p.m. at the Falmouth Senior Center on Dillingham Avenue. So they would like as much input from the folks out there as possible.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
There's actually two sessions. There's one at 2, and there's another session at 5:30. So if you can't make 2, you can hopefully make 5:30.
Great.
Yeah.
And your input is very valuable and important to them as we move forward. All right, first item on tonight's agenda is to discuss and vote a LIP application at 20 Shore Street. Good evening, Mr. Galasso. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Murphy, and members of the board, if I may. I've put together a fact sheet for the project, which you could follow along, and I'm here to answer any questions. Again, my name is Michael Galasso. I'm a project manager with TRI The Resource Inc. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We're here this evening to discuss a LIP application for 20 Shore Street. For those of you who may not be familiar, 20 Shore Street is the second house on the left as you go down Main Street. It's a property that TRI has owned for the last year. It was foreclosed upon, and it's been vacant for about 4 years now. And we were able to acquire it from Wells Fargo Bank. It's a three-story, 3-unit apartment building. As you can tell, it's in pretty tough shape. We have had prior approvals. It's located within the Historic District, the Downtown Historic District, and it was recently approved by the Historic District Committee. You previously saw this project as part of the funding that we secured from the Affordable Housing Trust through the CPC. The project has also been approved by the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee, the LIP Subcommittee, and the Old Stone Dock Association has also reviewed it and approved it. The proposed use would be one one-bedroom unit, one two-bedroom unit, and one three-bedroom unit. On the fact sheet, you can see what the rents would be. All the units will be restricted to households earning no more than 60% of median income. The improvements that are being proposed is a new roof, insulation, siding, front porch repairs, energy-efficient windows, energy-efficient gas and heating and hot water system, low-flow toilets, Energy Star. Our typical program is to make all these projects very energy efficient. We've secured funding, as I said previously, from the Affordable Housing Trust here in Falmouth, the Barnstable County Home Program, the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, and the Massachusetts Housing Investment Corporation. So there are 4 different sources of funding going into this project with a total cost of a little bit over $570,000. The monitoring agent for the project will be the Falmouth Housing Trust, and tonight we're asking you to approve the LIP application so that it can be moved on to the Department of Housing and Community Development to add 3 new units to the town's subsidized housing inventory. That was a condition of the funding from the Affordable Housing Trust. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
I'd just like to read into the record, if I may. This is from Marlene McCallum, Assistant Town Planner. The LIP Review Advisory Committee discussed the above proposal at a meeting on May the 8th and voted to recommend to the Board of Selectmen support the project as co-sponsor. The applicant should be in contact with the Office of the Town Manager to schedule a meeting of the Board of Selectmen. The Advisory Committee understands the project to be a 3 units of rental housing in a general residence zoning district. This use is allowed by right. Provide at least 1 unit affordable, so a comprehensive permit is not required in this instance. The committee understands the applicant is finalizing their plans with the Historic District Commission, and a certificate of appropriateness is likely to issue in the near future. After the approval is granted, the applicant is able to apply for the building and utility permits. The committee vote of supporting the conditioned on the applicant submitting a monitoring plan for the project to the planning department. The planning department will review the proposal and provide comments to the Board of Selectmen. The town of Falmouth, as a co-applicant of this project, is committed to meeting this obligation to monitor these units over time to ensure they remain affordable and eligible for inclusion in the subsidized housing inventory. The advisory committee commends the applicant for identifying 100% of the units as affordable and for providing a mix of unit sizes. Just one part of this, both Selectman Brager and I sit on that committee, the LIP Review Committee, and the one part that I would like to bring to everyone's attention is that this is a by right use. This is not just a typical 40B. You don't have to go for the comprehensive permit. It's a very unusual LIP application because LIP applications typically come before the board and then go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. In this case, it is a by right to have 3 units at this development. So I just wanted to let the board know that it's an unusual LIP that they're, even being by right, they're still making these units, all 3 of them, affordable, which is great for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could you just define the acronym LIP? I can't remember what it is either.
Local Initiative Program.
Thank you.
Yes, local initiative program. And I do want to say, I want to thank the manager's office and Heather for helping us get the project this far, so.
Another way to put that, Mrs. Flynn,
Yes.
is we call it a friendly 40B versus one that goes the other way, and a minimum of 30% of the units have to be affordable in this, yes.
Yeah.
Can I just make a couple comments? Thank you, Michael. A couple of comments. One, there will be a process to ensure that the units remain on the subsidized housing inventory, and that is a really important additional requirement of the town, that these units will be created as affordable, but we want to also ensure that they make it onto the subsidized housing inventory and count towards our count of affordable housing. But the other piece of a LIP application that the board needs to be aware of is that the town's taking on some additional responsibility, and that responsibility includes monitoring. It says that in the memo, but I wanted to reinforce that that is a little different from other comprehensive permits where those become the responsibility of a monitoring agent. This is a little bit different where the town does take on some responsibility. The applicant has proposed to provide a monitoring plan, but it does include some additional responsibility for the town.
Yes.
And a question for Heather. And how does the town do that?
Well,
How do we monitor?
We would work with the developer to have a plan of monitoring and a monitoring agent on behalf of the town. So it's a little bit different in terms of process.
So it's not town staff that monitors it?
In the long run, it would be
It
town
would be?
staff that would be keeping track, yes.
How is that different from the Housing Trust acting as monitor?
They have an obligation through DHCD to perform that monitoring.
But could they do that for the town also?
They could, yes. But the town would have to fund that.
And just for one thing, I know that it's important to both Mr. Braga and myself who've been on this committee, that we have a local monitoring agent, and meaning we've moved it up to Boston in the times past, and we've seen that on the housing project, the Wise Living project, where because we had a monitoring agent that was not from this general area, that it slipped through the cracks and we lost something, or potentially lost something as an affordable unit because of that. So if you can keep that in mind, and we can keep that in mind moving forward.
It's just,
Okay.
I think it's worth the effort, by the way, but it is an additional obligation of these, of a LIP application.
Okay. Do I have any other discussion from the board? Any questions of Mr. Glasso? When would you like to get going on this, Sue?
Yes, very soon, because we have some deadlines on some of our funding that we have to get started by the end of July.
Okay, so I'd look for a motion from the board to approve the LIP application for 20 Shore Street.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make it a motion to approve the LIP application for 20 Shore Street.
Okay. Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay, next up, Discuss and vote proposed conservation restriction, Teledyne Instruments, Inc., 49 Edgerton Drive in North Falmouth. Good evening, how you doing?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. How are you this evening?
Good, thanks, Kevin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ament Law Firm here in Falmouth. I'm here tonight with attorney Bob Ament. We represent Teledyne Instruments, located at 49 Edgerton Drive in North Falmouth. We are seeking to have the board approve a conservation restriction for a portion of property owned by Teledyne. As you can see from the plan, Teledyne's property is outlined in green here. It's bordered on the east by Route 28, on the north by the Camp Edwards Railroad, and on the west by Route 28A. Teledyne Instruments, formerly known as Benthos, has a long and proud history as a Falmouth company. It was founded in 1962 in North Falmouth and began making underwater equipment for government markets. In 1985, Benthos imaging and acoustic equipment was used by a Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution team to discover the sunken remains of the Titanic. In the 1990s, Benthos expanded into the geophysical industry, where its products and systems are used in the search for offshore oil and gas deposits. Benthos was acquired by Teledyne Technologies, incorporated in 2006, and is now known as Teledyne Benthos. As you may recall, Teledyne is in the midst of a significant expansion of its facilities to the extent of a 30,000 square foot addition to their existing layout. Construction of this expansion is well underway, and speaking with the facilities manager this evening, he estimates that they are approximately 50% completed and are targeting the first week in August as a potential occupancy date. At a meeting on June 11th, 2012, this board heard a presentation by Attorney Ament regarding this development and sent a letter expressing its support to the Cape Cod Commission. Shortly thereafter, the expansion was approved by Cape Cod Commission Development, a regional impact exemption decision. As is customary, in accordance with the Regional Development Policy Plan, dedication of open space with a conservation restriction is required. In this case, approval is conditioned on Teledyne recording a conservation restriction for 5.16 of their 14.38 acres. The conservation restriction area is outlined here with a dashed line. It has been proposed that the town of Falmouth will hold this restriction. This has already been approved by the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs as well as the Conservation Commission, which voted an approval for it on March 27th of this year. One of the last steps remaining prior to having the state sign off on this restriction is approval by the Board of Selectmen. It should be noted that this entire area falls within the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program area for endangered species. As such, an open space restriction for this exact area has already been recorded with the Registry of Deeds, and the restriction is in favor of the town. This is the type of project the town should be encouraging. The selectmen have already expressed their support for this project in the past. The project not only creates open space, but creates, or not only preserves open space, but creates new jobs and strengthens the town's economy. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board? Right?
The town's going to hold the restriction, and I don't know if this is a question for the applicant as much as it is for the board, but who's going to enforce and oversee the restriction? Is it something that's going to fall to the Conservation Commission or conservation staff?
I'll let the,
I can speak to that, Mr. Chairman. The restriction actually makes provisions for the applicant, Teledyne, to supply the costs for enforcing via a land surveyor or a professional engineer, and they'll furnish their reports to the Conservation Commission on a biannual basis.
it's important to note too, in discussions with the town manager and the assessor's office, unlike a conservation restriction that we saw recently, Teledyne will continue to be the owner of this property, and even though the property's value has been diminished, they will continue to pay taxes on this property, while the town will hold the conservation restriction on it. Yes.
So Teledyne is going to pay for engineering staff that will monitor and report to the Conservation Commission?
Correct.
I guess I'm a little concerned about that. It sounds like the fox watching the hen house. If we're going to hold conservation restrictions, I think the town needs to be able to manage and oversee the conservation restrictions. I guess one of the questions for the applicant is, was it required that the town hold the conservation restriction, or was that an option that you decided to ask the town to hold the conservation restriction? Is it something that could be held by, say, the 300 committee or some other entity?
Our preference was certainly the town, and it should be noted that the applicant is paying for a private third party to enforce this, and there are enforcement provisions within the conservation restriction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, I read that too in the conservation restriction. You know, the whole history of that parcel going back to Sam Raymond, you know, I don't want to go back that far. But then there was a time when the EDIC bought the property, you probably remember that. And then the future development of it has been very successful. Not only in terms of getting the development agreement with the Cape Cod Commission, which I think was very helpful too, but it was also extremely helpful to Benthos when Teledyne came along and purchased Benthos. I think it's been a really good marriage between the two in a sense, and the potential of the business has grown phenomenally. The number of contracts that they've received and their ability to produce their technical results of their technical ability and scientific ability and all of that. It's just been great for this community to have Benthos Teledyne here. And then to be able to have that conservation restriction, because the top of that property is pretty far up, and it really abuts Route 28. And it wouldn't even be feasible to have that property developed in a certain sense. So I think this is really, truly a win-win for the town and for Teledyne as well.
And I agree with you, and as a matter of fact, if you remember right, this board supported the development agreement to the Cape Cod Commission. Not only did it provide jobs, but it provided skilled jobs. It was only a short few years ago that this company was considering leaving Falmouth, whereas now they've reinvested in the community and it appears built themselves a home here to have more employees. Again, you know, this the restrictions being held by the town. The applicant is still the owner of the property and will continue to pay the taxes on the property as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sure.
you brought up the fact of the employment, all the new jobs that were created, and the very well-paying jobs
Right.
that are there. I mean, it's really good for anyone who's either living here or chooses to live here because they were able to secure a job there. But the salaries are very high for this area.
Right?
Well, I appreciate the jobs that are staying here and the opportunities that this development brings to the community. That's really not what we're discussing here this evening. Again, I'll reiterate my concern that this is sort of the fox watching the hen house, and I understand that the language is written into the conservation restriction, but I would have preferred to see an entity such as, say, the 300 committee holding this restriction. Even if there's a third party that's being paid here to oversee and report to the town, ultimately, the town still has to accept these reports, read these reports. We can't enforce something if we don't monitor it, and even if the monitoring on our end is simply reading the reports, I question whether or not conservation staff has the time, knowing that they're overloaded as it is, to add this to their workload. And I think it would be better, I think, if the 300 committee or some other third party that holds such conservation restrictions would be the holders of this as opposed to the town. This puts a burden on the town for enforcement, even if it is not full enforcement in that we don't have to monitor it to the extent that they're hiring someone to do that, but there's still an aspect that the town has to manage in this process, so.
And you bring up a very good point, and it's an area where I think this board needs to have some discussion. We have both the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals making these as requirements. And then the burden comes back on other groups to be able to fund these requirements. I think this board needs to have a little bit of time set aside where we can carefully think through how we want to express our ideas to both the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals on these costs. And these costs, although we're getting development in one specific area in these properties, there are soft costs that continue to escalate. And by merely making a conservation restriction a requirement, there maybe needs to be some forms of payment in lieu of taxes, some monitoring costs that compare those soft costs that the town will continue to bear. Because in fact, it is good to have the development on one sections of these properties, but there are additional costs. So maybe this board needs to take up at one of our future meetings how we do that, and maybe try to have a little think tank about how to progress that forward and find a way that the town doesn't suffer, but we can still monitor these properties. But again, getting back to this one particular property, what's the board's thoughts on this conservation restriction?
Well, I would move approval.
There's a motion?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Public comment? I see a hand up.
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. I understand this is required by the Cape Cod Commission, but I was just wondering, can you put a dollar figure on the tax avoidance this strategy allows?
I think that we had asked, I mean, I don't have the copy of the email. Do you, Mr. Suzuki?
What's the estimate, Mr. Chairman?
The value without the conservation restriction of the property would be $105,000. The tax dollars on that would be $844. With the conservation restriction, the value is $23,000. So the tax dollars are $184. There's roughly a difference of $600 in the taxes. Of course, those taxes, just so folks know out there, everyone needs to know this, when we put a conservation restriction on a property, those tax dollars don't go away. Those tax dollars are then filtered out to every other taxpayer in the community. So when we have open space, when we do that, the levy stays the same. It's just that every other taxpayer in this town pays a little bit more to be able to keep that property there. So that's the difference, $600 in the taxes on this property.
Okay, thank you. It's
Yeah.
very generous of us.
Thank you. So, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, present, discuss, and vote bike path design in Route 151. Sure, please, go get it. Whoever's going to present needs to go to the microphone, though. Okay, thank you. Peter, you want to chair? Or?
Good evening. My name is Douglas Prentice. I'm a traffic transportation engineer with the firm of Face Boffett and Thorndike. Our firm is a multidisciplinary firm. We've done a lot of work around the Cape. The little connection from the Cape to Bayside, the flyover, we designed that. Presently work on Route 134 in Dennis, in Brewster, New Orleans, working in the fire district in Barnstable. And I've personally worked here in town about 10 plus years ago. I worked on the expansion of Hui with actually Mr. Lemon's firm when he was here on that expansion. And also worked on the Mullen School when that was renovated a bunch of years ago too. So I'm certainly very familiar. Just to give you a little sort of background on kind of what we're doing here. About a year and a half ago we were engaged by the town of Mashpee to sort of look at the corridor that they have basically from the Rotary to the town line, which is here. Pete, if you give me the next one. And one of the objectives for the project was to basically find out what some of the issues are along the corridor, improve mobility for everybody. So now there's not just cars, but pedestrians, bikers, things of that nature. And then provide the town for a framework of, what do we do out here? What are some of the things we ought to be looking at? So we did basically traffic counts and things of that nature, made observations during the period. And if you go out there, even in the Falmouth section, you can see people walking in the street. You can see people, biking on the street without any shared use path or so forth. Next slide. So this is a section. So this is looking at a loaf of bread and looking at it from the end. So this is a cross section. And this actually exists from Old Barnstable, where the high school is, that big signalized intersection, goes to Frank Hicks Job Fishing Road. The only place along that whole corridor where you have a shared use path is that section of road. So the rest of the corridor, going to the Rotary and then coming west to here, there's no accommodations for bicycles. So what we have is the varied width of that path varies from 7 to 9 feet. That's what it is today. There are grassy strip between the roadway edges, 7 to 14 feet, again, depending upon where you are. Lanes are 12 feet, some cases they're 14, some cases they're 13. Shoulders are 2 to 4 feet. At intersections, you may have turn lanes, so things are maybe a little wider. But the intent that the town was looking at is we'd like to enhance mobility for everybody. Some of the issues that we identified, I think in the next few slides show that, was, and sort of give you a little background of what we did. We did some preliminary analysis already to find out. We did traffic counts and observations and analysis. We met with the state, met with the Cape Cod Commission, and went through the standard process that's actually in the design guide, the big thick document that the state has. So we actually filed a project notification form, filed a project information form, so as we move through it, and then this past March, the state, basically the district highway directors, the chief engineer, reviewed all the material that we submitted to the town, which the town then presented to the project review committee, and they said, you've got a good project here. This is a regional corridor. This does warrant some upgrade. It's not on the tip yet, all right, so I should be cautioning you and let you know that, but it's at least in the loop. and there's an official number assigned by DOT to the particular project to say, you've got a real project here. Now what you need to do is show your commitment. In other words, the town needs to commit to, town of Mashpee needs to commit to DOT to say you're serious about this. So what we are presently doing is putting together a standard scope and fee for the town, which the town then will send to Mass DOT. The next few slides, these are some of the locations that we counted along here. Some of the ones that Peter and I and Brian have talked about in Mashpee would be these like along in here, but we've actually counted traffic and observation on those corridor. From here to here is about 2.2 miles to the town line. All right, next slide. And here are some of the issues that we identified. Artery line intersections, corridor width kind of varied, lack sidewalks, lack paths, no accommodations for everybody. Posted speed limits of 45 to 50. If you've been on that corridor, you know people are trucking along that corridor. And it's something that we want to take into consideration when we look at that corridor to say, how can we slow the road down? So we're going to want to change the character of the road. A few more issues. The traffic signals are inefficient the way they're set up. You've got some modifications that occurred to them, and particularly at the high school, middle school is right there in Mashpee. There were some, you see a lot of kids crossing. Things are a little confusing. The phasing doesn't work right. You've got some what we call level of service F. It's a qualitative assessment how the intersections work. So how do we fix these? Should there be signals? Should there be some enhancements to improve everybody? And I think most importantly, the project's not a complete street. There's a few staff members in the office here who actually attended some of the sessions that were sponsored by Mass DOT to talk about what are some of the principles and concepts involved in a complete street. So the next slide, again, a few more issues. That's about the volume that that road carries. They're also, particularly in Mashpee, I believe there are over 200, 250 units that are already been approved on the Mashpee Commons site that have yet to be developed. There's also some major parcels of land that could be slated for improvement. So I think with looking at all that, it's sort of now is the time to say we should be doing something out here. Pavement conditions in horrible shape out there. There's utility patches right down the corridor. So what we did is this is the format. This is right out of Mass DOT's design guide. As we started at this level, so we filled out the information, and right now we're actually at this stage right here. So we've gone through this to do a report, project review committee action that occurred on March 20th of this past year, and now basically the status says, the state wrote a letter to the town of Mashpee saying, you've got a very good project here, now it's your turn to hire a consultant and let's get going and to prove you're serious. So that would be certainly putting together a team that could be environmental people, survey people. We're starting to mobilize in our office to put that scope together for the town itself. Okay, and then of course as you go through it, there's environmental studies right away. I mean, it's a pretty long process, certainly, but this is the stage we're in right now, I think, with the town of Mashpee. So I called Peter and I said, you know, Peter, and I think when we met with DOT, the project originally was to go to the town line, and it kind of didn't make sense. And we met with Peter, we met with DOT, and they said, you know, it might be appropriate to maybe look at it a little further, bring it to some sort of physical terminus. It might be an intersection or something like that, particularly with the fairgrounds being closed there. So we met a couple of weeks ago, and I think there was some discussion to sort of, it looks good, and wanted to get the board's input. So I thought it was suggested I come down, fill you folks in, and you know, certainly happy to answer any questions if we could. And that's the last slide. I think the next slide is just really a questions answered, next steps.
Couple of questions. Who's paying for this?
This eventually would be, because the project is significant in size, the project would go on the tip. It would probably be broken into phases. So it's not in the tip, but so it's in the queue. So if you look at the Cape Cod Commission website right now, it's listed for future programming. So that would enter the state process. So that means all the protocol, all the standards, standard fee, standard scope would all be Mass DOT.
Okay. The only thing that I have a problem with is you're talking about a proposed build-out on 151. The town of Falmouth has been very conservative on doing any development whatsoever on 151. But yet, by doing this, we're going to encourage the town of Mashpee to build out on 151. So they want a clear path from 28 to Mashpee, and then you're gonna build it out, and we're the ones that have said we're not gonna develop and do curb cuts on 151. So I've got to say, we need some regional planning here, because we go from here to Hyannis, we have to go through that bottleneck.
Yep.
And I love the bike path idea, but you opened the gate here about our discussion about build-out. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. I can't miss an opportunity to say that. We continue to stop any development on 151, but yet Mashpee wants to continue to creep all the way to the Falmouth line.
One of the things that Mashpee is looking at is trying to control.
Yeah, Doug, can you put the lights back on?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Is try to control some of the curb cuts on the corridor itself. In other words, thinking if there are some other developments. And I guess it's sort of, I mean, obviously with the economy a little slower now, things aren't moving quickly, but it's just sort of trying to plan ahead. I mean, this is not a project that's going to happen overnight, certainly. It's going to be a long-term project. But I think it offers some foresight to say, you know, if things do happen, then maybe we ought to be ready for it. It's sort of like if you're thinking about when you're building your new house, you think, well, geez, how many kids are we going to have? Let's build up so we get 3 bedrooms, that should be enough for us, that type of thing. And I think this is what's looked at. We're not saying a corridor of 4 lanes of road, but we're basically trying to make it a complete street. So make basically a facility that you can, when you go out there, you can see the pedestrians walking comfortably. You see bikers riding in a very, order fashion. And all the cars or intersections are accommodated. There are some locations, particularly where old Cherry Stones used to be in Brick Hill, where turns are all over the place, there's no order, and I think that there's some intersections that are offset, so maybe do something to maybe realign them. So sort of control some of that, I think, is the thinking.
So what is the total distance in the town of Falmouth that this would be?
I think from the town line, we've had a couple of discussions on limits from the town line, which I think, and we're talking to Peter and Brian, they were looking at going to Sandwich Road, I believe, correct? That's about another 6,100 feet.
Okay.
Okay.
Question. I drive that a lot, so I'm
Yep.
trying to think about from Sandwich Road to the Rotary
Right.
in terms of how that land is developed. But do you know offhand what the zoning is in Mashpee along Route
I don't
151?
know. We haven't got into that just yet, yeah. I know that there is some conservation land about where the Quasinet River is and things of that nature. So I think there's the high school, which I think there's an emergency access there, so I think there's limits in that way. I think the concern Mashpee had was down at the Mashpee Commons area, where they have approved years ago for additional housing. And so how does that dovetail in? How does that fit in? And I think that this project may offer some good connections for biking. For example, if you can go from 151 up through Great Neck North, which is, they're in the process of reconstructing, over to 130. Right now, there's no connectivity, and I think in talking to Peter and Brian, that's something they look at too, is be able to connect in town, in Falmouth here as well.
Okay, Pat.
Well, my other thought is where for the Falmouth and Mashpee line is just past the Schumet Pond, the residential area, and it's almost where the fairgrounds, I think,
Correct.
starts. So we're pretty much undeveloped from our town line on down. But I'm thinking how this could possibly really improve the corridor. I mean, when you talk about some of the traffic issues or the intersection issues that exist right now, and if this project isn't just to create a bike path or a bikeway, but actually to improve the whole corridor, to make it work better, I think would be to everyone's benefit, if there were sufficient funds to do that, from, say, from the town line all the way to the Rotary.
When we met with Mass DOT, they realized that this project was bigger than a lot of the ones they typically see. So that's why they suggested to be in phases. So what we were looking at was from the Rotary to Algonquin, which is like a four-way
Algonquin,
intersection,
yeah.
that goes right. So that'd be one phase, then the second phase occur after that, because of the length of it and so forth too. And I think our thinking is that it'd probably be good once we get survey in hand, and there's no time limits yet on that or when that's going to occur, to have sort of a concept to see along the whole corridor, how should it look?
Yeah.
How do you connect the existing shared use path that ends at Job Fishing's Frank Hicks? How do you bring that to the Rotary? How does that work? How do you carry it west from Old Barnstable Road to the fairgrounds, as an example?
Right.
Should there be a sidewalk on one or the opposite side of the street? So those are all things that we've sort of listed, and but haven't any definition yet. It still kind of comes through in the assessment, the preliminary assessment.
Right?
I actually see a lot of benefits to this. I mean, obviously, the concerns about development on 151 are warranted, but I think Mashpee's going to do whatever Mashpee wants to do, regardless of what we decide to, whether we decide to join this or not. And I think if we can take advantage of the fact that the state wants to look at this, the whole corridor, one of the questions that comes to mind is, why are we stopping at Sandwich Road? Why aren't we going all the way to the end of 151? Because I think there's an opportunity here with the shared use path. If that's going to be extended to the Mashpee Rotary, on the other end, we can extend it. In fact, when I first looked at this on the agenda, I'm thinking it's got something to do with the bike path where it ends at 151. And I'm thinking now we could extend this, obviously, from the end of the bike path at 151 all the way east to the Mashpee Rotary. And now we're talking about extending the bike paths and the accessibility from a bicycling standpoint along this section of the Cape. And certainly, I mean, anybody who's been to the county fair, the traffic out there, if there's an alternate means of transportation, if people could ride their bikes to the fair, which I see as one of those possibilities here, if you've opened up a bikeway along the 151 corridor, it might certainly alleviate some of the traffic congestion there by doing that. So I think there are some benefits here. The question is can we go all the way to 151, or is the state saying, no, you've got to stop here?
The state's not, first of all, I think the state is a very different organization than years ago. I've worked with them, I think when I had brown hair many years ago. They're very different now, believe me. They're very hands-on, they're very accommodating to what the communities want. The project development engineer, I speak very highly of her. She's wonderful. And we met with the people from Mashpee, the Cape Cod Commission, and she says it doesn't make any sense to stop at the town line. So, particularly with the fairgrounds right there. So that's when I touched base with Peter and Brian to say, and they said, it seems to make sense maybe to stop it at Currier Road where the flashing beacon is. And then just as of, I think, last Friday, Peter said, we were talking, I think he had, it was comes to you, sir, about maybe it ought to be looking at a little different location. So the state's not going to say no. It's what you folks want, where the limit is. I think the opportunity is here because they've already approved to the town line with Mashpee. This is where the state, and just maybe to talk about the next steps, this is where I guess your involvement would be. The town of Falmouth would need to send a letter to Mass District 5, okay, with the particular project information number, which I think Peter has, to say what we would like to do is extend that project so you kind of go on the coattail of Mashpee. The state's going to look at saying, we want to see one captain of the ship. We want to deal with one community. So they would work with Mashpee as being the lead on this. So then you would write a letter saying, we've recognized, here's the meeting, we've had this, we've had internal discussions. We would like to extend the project to location X. And then it's up to Mass DOT to say yay, nay, or whatever. But more than likely, I doubt very much that they recognize that certainly this is a big project, so timing is, the length of time for it to get done is certainly long. It's not a 2-year period.
So my question is,
Yep.
I'm sure your time is not free. Who are you working for right now?
Right now, I'm working for, our contract with Mashpee has expired.
Okay.
And right now, I'm working under our overhead in the company.
Okay.
FSD.
I'm trying to find out
Yep.
whether this is something we would do in-house or whether we would, look to go to a town meeting vote. Peter, maybe I could ask that to
Right.
my own town engineer.
Sure.
How we would move forward with this. And Brent has a great idea. Yet, ultimately, if we could connect the Shining Sea bike path with something like this, it would provide an opportunity throughout the whole Cape. But
Correct, yep. Peter McConerty, town engineer. That is the ultimate goal, to take it from the Falmouth town line to the bike path. One thing I do want to mention, though, is that the state, I believe when we're talking with the funds, the state is talking construction funds. They will afford the construction funds, but I believe the town would have to do the design funds. So the design funds are usually 10% of as a good number is 10% of the project. So to get we were thinking as a chunk to get from the Mashpee Town Line to Sandwich Road. Right now, for design, we could handle through design for the town. So for the funds for the design for the town.
So the town itself would do that? Or we would?
No, the town would contract with
Okay.
FST or, yeah, to do
And
the.
do we have those funds available?
In the past, what the town has done, they've done it with the Shining Sea Bike Path, they've done it with some of the bridges. When it goes over to the TIP projects it goes over to the JC meetings over in Barnstable, it's for the construction, but if you can show to the state that the design is done, these are shovel-ready, the construction's ready to go, that gives it more of an initiative to move the project forward, so.
But my question is, you're saying that we need to do the design. Do we have money available to do the design, or is that something we'd look forward to putting as a town meeting warrant article?
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't answer that question 100%. In the past, what we've done with the bridges and with the bikeways, we've had the funds come out of our Chapter 90 account. So that funds for the design of the project, and then the project will be shovel-ready, basically, and then it sits on the shelf until the construction funds comes in and the TIPS gets available. So in the past, that's what we've done. And we've been able to do it with the Shining Sea Bikeway, we've been able to do it with some of the other projects, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Doug?
Just trying to, in the picture that we have in our handout, it shows the shared use path on both sides of the road. And I understand right now in Mashpee, I think it's just on one side. Is the idea for it to be one on each side of it, or?
We haven't developed anything yet at all.
Okay.
This is pre-concept. I mean, these are just ideas down on paper. We haven't, until we actually get survey and identify some of the constraints, for example, there could be some grade issues, there could be retaining walls, there could be bridges, there could be wetlands. It may preclude that. So none of that has been defined at all, okay? All I know right now is that it just seems when you're out there, it would seem to make sense to connect the north side and bring it through, with the fairgrounds being on that side and all that. The town of Mashpee's talked about where they have their commercial development on the west end, having some sidewalks over there where the Sunoco is and things like that, but that's to be determined at some point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to take, well, I got Mr. Lynch already standing, then I'll take you, Dr. Gross, all right? Did you, he's already?
I didn't see Dr. Gross.
Oh, all right, okay.
Kevin Lynch, Precinct 3, member of the Bikeways Committee for a long time. I just want to mention a couple of things. In fact, I wasn't here on time because I come in from a wake, but one of the advantages of connecting to Mashpee is by connecting to another town, the construction is, the state will fund the bike path or a project in the town, but the town has to pay 25% of the cost. If you connect to another town, they will pay 100% of the cost through highway funds. So that's an advantage to connect to Mashpee. If you don't know, all the construction that we did on the Shining Sea Bikeway from Locust Street to County Road was paid 100% by the state because we connect to Oak Bluffs. Because the state highway is the ferry. And based on that, we were able to make a deal on it. So the other thing I mentioned is when the last time they resurfaced Route 151, they actually put 5-foot shoulders on that road, which is not very common, to make it better for bicyclists. And I think it would be a great connection to the Shining Sea Bikeway. I don't see where development gets involved, particularly when you get over by the 151, the Nickelodeon. Most of that is part of the Crane Wildlife, and I don't see a development problem with this. But it would be to our advantage to connect to another town, and also there's also other funding things that we can look for that we have had in the past through the Department of Conservation and Recreation. There's a lot of these grants that we can get, so I think this is, I'm not telling you how to do it tonight, but I think it's something that we should approve to go look and see if we can get this project done.
Well, can I ask you a question while you're there? And you're an impartial third party here, the way I'm looking at it. if we just connect from Sandwich Road, did we use all of the connection power, or should we wait and do the entire plan all the way to the Shining Sea bike path to get 100% of the state's money to connect? Do you follow my drift here? Is
Well,
just by connecting a short period, did we?
I'm not an expert on this, but I'd say if you connect from Mashpee to Sandwich Road, it would work. If we sometime in the future do the other part, we could see, well, we're connecting to Oak Bluffs or Mashpee.
Going back to that old bluff, okay. All right. Okay,
So when, you know, I got this information early on when I was up at Mass Highway when we were looking to extend the Shining Sea Bikeway up to the skating rink. So that's where I heard it. So and we brought it forward, and they did pay 100% construction. Although we did, on the second portion, or the last portion, we had to use a town meeting article. And we may want to do that, but I think we're in preliminary design and ideas phase that, you know, we should look into all of these things and at least let it go forward to, for more discussion.
okay, Dr. Gross?
I'm Ed Gross, and I'm the chairman of the Bikeways Committee. I succeeded Kevin, whose illustrious career, Kevin Lynch, who just sat down, whose illustrious career deserves accolades of all kinds. You may find it unusual for me to raise questions about anything that somebody wants to buy the town in the way of bicycling, but I do have some questions about this. First, for both Peter and our presenter, whose name I'm sorry, I missed. Douglas Prentice, you're from FST, yes? Okay, and I'm certainly familiar with the excellent work of FST. My question is, does a grade-separated bike path on one side of the road satisfy the complete streets requirement in the Massachusetts Highway Design Manual?
Okay. You're going to ask all the questions, and then do you want to ask one at a time?
No, that's the only question I really have, and then
Okay.
I wanted to make some comments.
Okay, just give him an opportunity to respond through the chair.
Sure.
And also, just to interject, our firm did the redesign of the Cape Cod Rail Trail from Dennis all the way to Wellfleet, so that was probably 10 years ago anyway. So multiple municipalities we're quite familiar with. What would probably happen with
Through the chair, you don't have
with the shared use path, that would be one section. On the road, the hardcore bikers, those are the people with the spandex, they like to ride. They don't want to deal with people walking dogs and things like that, so there would need to be provisions on road for them. So a minimum width is probably 11-foot lane and a 4-foot shoulder, so 15 feet. So the edge to edge would be 30. Usually that's what they want to be. They want to be there. They don't want to mess around with people walking dogs, people walking carriages, things of that nature. They want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So that would probably be what would be suggested, is that section of roadway accommodates those hardcore people, and then you have your shared use path. It's not longer a bike path, it's a shared use path. That's the terminology today, because you have all types of users on it. And by the way, the section that I showed you earlier of what's out there today in Mashpee, it varies from 7 to 9. The new AASHTO design guide that came out last year recommends a minimum width of 10 feet. And that's where the Cape Cod Rail Trail, we actually designed that for 10 feet. In some areas, and I was talking to somebody earlier before the meeting, they actually suggest, high traffic areas that maybe you do a little wider, just because of, you got a lot of activity, housing or businesses or something like that, and that could be at 14. All right, but typically 10 foot would be the minimum on the shared use path.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Brooks.
Okay. When I think about any amenity, bicycling amenity that someone proposes, I want to think about three salient things, three really important things. First, does it improve access? And this would certainly improve access to a 2-week-a-year event, that is the fair, and any other events at the fairgrounds. There's no longer a theater there. If it does improve access, it has to do so by tying into the network of streets. So if Sandwich Road is where it terminates, then Sandwich Road is going to be considered to be a bicycling road. It's certainly used now, but we might want to support it a little better. That is by putting in wider curb lanes or shoulders than we have now. Because Sandwich Road is notoriously dangerous in its northernmost extreme for motorists as well as for cyclists. So I think that that's important. And another thing that's important is that it not become a road to nowhere. I'm sure relatively few people realize we have one bike lane in Falmouth, and it is truly a road to nowhere. It runs along Curly Boulevard for a distance from the Rotary, from 28A, and then just disappears. So if you're on a bike and you follow it, it sort of just takes you somewhere it leaves you. So we want that to be considered. Does it do anything for the town? Does it improve access to business? Does it attract tourism? Do people look at it and say, "Jesus, this is a town I want to come to, ride my bike, spend some money, stay overnight"? Well, it's going to be very conspicuous because it's right there along 151, but it isn't particularly pretty. You know that. Unless it's separated by a substantial vegetation berm, there'll be really nothing to look at except traffic. So I think that has to be taken into consideration before we make a serious commitment of town money. Speaking of which, Kevin was talking about connections to other towns. Several years ago, the National Park Service funded a feasibility study to see if we could tie all the bike facilities and heavily used bike roads into a network on Cape Cod. I participated in that, as did any number of other people. It was a very large project, and a map was drawn up and was adopted by the commission and is the master plan, really, for bicycling related development on the Cape. And on that, Old Barnstable Road is the connection. Nobody talked about 151, I think because it's obviously so difficult. But I think that it would be wonderful to have 151 work. And I think we have to be very careful to make sure that it does work and it brings the bicyclists and anybody else that uses it into Falmouth, into streets, good crossings, safe crossings. Because the last issue I always consider is safety. And will this make things safer? Well, the experience is absolutely solid that side paths, as they're sometimes called, paths that run alongside of motorways, do not improve safety. They're neutral. Sometimes they're worse, sometimes they're better. And it really depends on intersection design because that's where the conflicts occur. If motorists typically don't scan over, say you're driving eastbound on 151, you don't look over on the other side of the road to see if a cyclist is coming towards you before you start making a left turn. They're so far away, and you can't gauge their speed. So that's where the conflicts occur. They occur at turning points on the road. And we have to think about that as well. So while it would be very nice to have 151 work, I think we should be very hard-headed about what we try to spend our money on. Anyone have any questions for me?
Well, I do have a question. My question is, I know you can't speak for the entire committee, so would you support this or not support this?
I would want to look at design step by step.
Well, that's the point. We'd have to fund the design, from what I'm gathering this evening.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm asking you. Would you, I mean, I know you can't speak for your committee, would you support the design?
You really put it in the spot.
We're going to pay for the design.
You really put it in the spot because there are other things in town that would cost the same kind of money that I really think are important, more important. They're 52-week-a-year things, and I would think more about those than this up front. But if it's possible, we can recoup that or get grants to fund the design phase as well, or if the design is very expensive, then I would. I just don't want to detract from other things that are more important, I think.
Okay.
From my point of view.
Would it be possible to ask the Bikeways Committee to work with the town engineer and look over the potential possibilities here and see if there's benefit, as you say, or if we might be, throwing money away on something which sounds like a great idea on paper, but may not actually, as you say, may not improve safety, may end up being a road to nowhere, so to speak.
Yeah, there are a few partnerships we would more welcome. Peter is great to work with. And speaking on behalf of the committee, do we have a quorum?
It's not posted. It's not posted.
Can't discuss it.
Thank you. Don't get us in trouble here. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say that obviously the project is coming from the town of Mashpee. So, but I would think that there would be concept discussions with Falmouth before we got committed to any type of design. And you're right, I think the concept discussion should occur between the town and the Bikeways Committee.
Okay, so, anything else? Maybe the board would just leave it as, these groups can work together a little bit, and then come back with the thoughts of the Bikeways Committee and Peter and the
It has
consultant.
potential.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it. The next up would be a report from the Capital Advisory Committee. The Capital Advisory Committee has, go ahead. Oh, Port Security, I'm sorry. Vote, discuss and vote 2013 Port Security Grant Application.
Good evening. Rick Fraser, for the record, Harbor Master. I'm here tonight to ask your permission as part of the new protocol for applying for the soon-to-be-announced 2013 Port Security Grant funding. You might remember we have applied for and received port security money since 2009. We got money for a patrol boat in 2009. We've got money for radios and other equipment, including laptops in 2010, FLIR thermal imaging equipment in 2011, and this year we did get $25,000 for a NASBA training course. We actually, ironically enough, we started one today at the rec center, and we have another one coming up in the second week of September. This request would be for 3 additional NASBA courses with no funds, no match required by the town. And the other thing that's important regarding these grants is they're regional grants, so all members of the Cape and Islands Harbor Masters Association, which makes up 28 towns, would be eligible to send people to these training courses.
When is the deadline for the application?
I don't know that because the official announcement has not come up, but it will be coming up within a month. Actually, they gave us that notification 2 weeks ago, so we should be getting the notification very, very soon.
Do you have the time for us to refer this to the Finance Committee or not?
I think we could. I don't know how frequently they are meeting, but I would say that the $25,000 one that we got last year did go to the Finance Committee, and they had no issue with it.
Go ahead, Pat.
Well, Mr. Chair, this is really for education. I mean, so there's no commitment. It isn't for equipment. There's no commitment from the town other than the town would be the lead, I guess, person on the project. That was going to be my question. I read through it and I thought they were fabulous courses and really so important for first responders, for anyone to have. And I noticed they were limited to 12 students per class, but there's more than one class for each of the categories? Is that how it works?
Well, this would fund the 3 different classes, and the amount of students is different per class.
Right. So some of them would be open to other communities as well?
Yes, like the one we started today, actually, we have people from Brewster, Wellfleet, Fairhaven, anybody that's a member of the Cape and Islands Association.
I think it's hugely beneficial, and I'm sure not only our staff, but other staffs as well. To be able to learn these skills is incredible.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree with you, but my only question is, and I want to make sure we have a timing issue, that we could approve this tonight with subject to just the review of the Finance Committee, and then it wouldn't have to come back to this board. What's the thoughts of this board?
Well, I have a question about that, because I thought we only had sent anything to the Finance Committee when there were long-term commitments from the town, when the town either had to have matching funds or sometime in the future, the town would have to pick up the costs. But this is like education. It pays for people to be educated, and then that's the end of it. It goes away. And there are no, maybe I'm misunderstanding the reasons for referring to the Finance Committee. I don't know. Somebody else can.
But does this lead to certification?
One course in NASBA is required for harbor certification. These would be above those.
So it's not like if we get people certified, they need to recertify in 4 years, and we would be having a potential future cost. Okay.
Yes.
I tend to agree with what Ms. Flynn is talking about, that unlike when we've had grants come before us before where the fire department wanted a grant to purchase equipment, and obviously there's the operations and maintenance of that equipment. I think in this case, it's training. I can't think of any long-term costs associated with training. Once you get trained, or as Mr. Jones suggested, if there's certification involved, but there isn't, so.
What's your pleasure?
Mr. Suso in his report says that it would go to the Finance Committee if it requires future conditions or requirements, including anticipated cost to the town, which this would not have. So you're right. Thank you.
I don't make motions, so I'm just
I
waiting
will
for a
make
motion.
a motion to wholeheartedly endorse this educational plan, not only for our own employees, but for others on the Cape.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
Could we then inform the Finance Committee that we have accepted this grant with the understanding that it was for education only? If they have concerns about that, they can get back to us, but
Right. Okay.
that's our interpretation of that.
So
We have a motion and a second.
okay. Did you want that as part of them? Are you asking for that to be part of?
No, but I just, maybe
If the town manager can notify that, okay. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any public comment? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you.
Oops. Right.
I
My
am so
foot.
sorry.
It's okay.
Next up is report from the Capital Advisory Committee. The Capital Advisory Committee has suggested that they not make a report this evening based on the fact that the composition of the board will be changing tomorrow with Mr. Braga's retirement. And so it might be, rather than do the presentation twice, the committee has suggested to wait until the meeting of June the 3rd, and they would do that presentation at that time. I was trying to get you in Dutch, but we didn't make it, sorry. Vote, next up, discuss and vote conservation restriction, Atria 300 Committee. Yeah, this was continued from May the 13th. Good evening. Hi, Jessica.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Rittenauer, Administrator of the 300 Committee Land Trust, and with me here this evening is Leonard Johnson, Treasurer of the 300 Committee, and Paul Glenn, Attorney for Atria Woodbriar, and Mike McGrath of Holmes and McGrath, who's the engineer for Atria Woodbriar. I will go over the details of the request from the 300 Committee, and Paul Glenn is available to answer or to provide information about the property tax implications of this particular conservation restriction. And Leonard Johnson will make some closing remarks, and hopefully with the group of us here, we can answer any questions that you may have. I do have a plan that I'd like to put on the display here. The Atria property is 19.2 acres, divided into one lot that's 5 acres that has the Atria, the assisted living building that will be opening, scheduled for July. The 14.75 acres that's shown here with the lines across it is the conservation parcel that has been set aside for open space as a requirement of the development permit. This entire site is within the jurisdiction of the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, which is administered by the Division of Fisheries through the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. The redevelopment of this site from the golf course to the assisted living facility required review by the State Natural Heritage Program. When Atria submitted their plans, they had proposed the set-aside of the 14.75 acres under a conservation restriction, and that plan was approved by the State Natural Heritage. The development of the property was permitted by the Zoning Board of Appeals through Chapter 40B. Again, the same proposal, development on 5 acres with the 15 acres set aside to be protected permanently through a conservation restriction. The 300 Committee Land Trust has been, actually started reviewing this property in 2009. And we went through the features of the property, the fact that it has frontage on Jones Pond and Souls Pond, it has an Atlantic white cedar swamp, and it has rare habitat. It ranked highly on our criteria for conservation value, and the 300 Committee's Board of Directors voted to accept the property when the time came for the title to be transferred. That is scheduled to happen in July. We will accept title to the property and in turn convey a conservation restriction to the Compact of Conservation Trusts. So the request that's before you this evening is approving that conservation restriction, which at this point we would like to be able to submit to the state for their final approval once it passes through this board. Atria plans to occupy the building in July, and we will be accepting title to the property then. A couple of improvements that are scheduled to occur to the property before we accept the title is a handicap accessible ADA compliant trail with 6 benches. We have in the conservation restriction draft a reserved right to maintain an area, a mowed area for a view shed to the ponds. We also have a reserved right to construct boardwalks. The boardwalks will not be constructed in advance by Atria, but the reserved right is there when and if the time comes that the 300 Committee wishes to pursue grant funding to install those boardwalks. The property will be open to the public and maintained by the 300 Committee Land Trust through our stewardship program. We are also receiving an endowment grant for this property, specifically $25,000 stewardship endowment grant that the 300 Committee will hold in an account so that we can have funding into the future to maintain this property. At this time, I'd like to turn the discussion to Paul Glenn to speak about the property tax implications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, my name's Paul Glenn, Glenn Law Offices for Atria tonight. And so thank you. We split up the information so that we're not redundant for you here. We respect your time, and we definitely respect the board trying to turn over every stone that you can to get income for the town, extra taxes. We understand that concept here. What I'd like to do is kind of take a progression with you. Either you can go up or down depending upon your perspective here. I think there was some information that perhaps this was $1 million piece of property and it was a tax avoidance, and it's just not that. I think both the assessor's office now realizes that that's not $1 million. It's not $1 million property, and it's not a tax avoidance plan that Atria has. So it'd be $1 million if it perhaps was totally fair market unrestricted. If you go to just open space, the town taxes open space at about $25,000 an acre, if you just consider it open space. That's open space that could later be turned into developable space. If you take it down another notch, you have land with a conservation restriction on it. That comes out to be about $4,400 an acre for land with conservation on it. And I think the town assessor has made a report like that to you. Now, I think there's still 2, perhaps even 3, as we bring down the value of the land, at least the importance monetarily to the town for this conservation restriction. If you can imagine a conservation restriction, the normal one that you see is, we'll take, for instance, if I had my 100 acres, and instead of my 12,000 square feet, and I wanted to put a conservation restriction on 99 acres and keep 1 acre for myself, I could do that and prevent the public from going on it. I think that's the typical conservation restriction that you see. You have a situation where somebody is putting a conservation restriction on property near them, so that element is here. But it also, the typical one you see will prevent the public from going on it. In this situation, the public can go on it. I mean, more than go on it, that's the whole purpose of it. When this was all thought out, that was the whole purpose of it. The Atria is doing a project in town. They wanted to be a good citizen. How do we do this? And the whole thing was really thought out. It was a very good plan, and it still is, that do we have a development that's more spread out, or do we have a development that's compact with a lot of open space? And there's debate in that. Some people would like one, some people would like another, but the consensus was we had one that was a larger building with more open space. So this is open space that's open to the public. It's not exclusive use. So you take that $4,400 an acre, now it's worth something less than that, because the public can be on it, and the public is encouraged to it. So take it down another notch. Atria just doesn't want this land. That's the whole purpose of it. That's really the beauty of it all here, is you have a company that knows how to run assisted living facilities, and you have one of our gems in town, you have a 300 committee. This is what they do. This is the whole idea. This is the plan. They manage it. So down another notch, not only aren't they going to own it, but they're going to pay the $25,000, and it's not part of the decision. So there's a comprehensive permit that's on file, and there's no requirement that there's a notation in it that the Atria could transfer the property to the 300 committee. Doesn't mention consideration, but I suppose that was a possibility that the 300 committee could even pay something for it. That's a typical situation. This is one where Atria is paying $25,000 to the 300 committee to get them started. They're doing the work, too. They're not just, here's the land, you build it. You build it. Atria is spending the money doing the work. And I think they will be good corporate citizens. They have been. So the idea of paying money in lieu of taxes, that they just don't, they're not going to own it. That's a very important part of it. They don't want to own it. They don't manage open space. There's liability involved with that. 300 committee does a nice job doing that. So they don't want to own it. So they want to be good corporate citizens. They gave that $25,000 to the 300 committee, not because they had to, but they did. They don't now want to, at every step of the way, be making concessions here and there. But I think they'll continue to behave in the manner that they did that. And, when they're all done, it's occupied, and their occupancy permits, the deeds are all done. I think you'll find that Atria will continue to be a good corporate citizen that they have been. So that's a tax thing. I think it's just the opposite of what you normally see for a conservation restriction, one where somebody is looking to preserve forever the land in their backyard. They are doing that. That element is there. But the key thing is here, usually it's to the exclusion of others. Here, it's welcoming others, and the important thing is they want to deed it. They just don't want to have title to this property. They just don't want to have title to the property. So Atria, really what's being decided tonight is the 300 committee the 300 committee is going to receive this land. The 300 committee is going to receive this land. What you're deciding tonight is
should they receive it with a conservation restriction in perpetuity, to keep it the way we want it kept. So I ask you to just, it's part of the comprehensive permit. A lot of work has been done on this before and after, and I just ask the board to accept this conservation restriction. And I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
We'll finish with the presentation.
Leonard Johnson, Treasurer of the 300 Committee. I'd just like to make a few closing comments. This project that we have before you tonight is a different type of conservation restriction than you're accustomed to seeing from us. In this case, we're going to own the land, as Paul says, and the conservation restriction is going to be held by the Compact of Cape Cod Land Trust. The same entity can't own the property and own the conservation restriction. So in effect, the compact will monitor this property and make sure that we are living up to the requirements of the conservation restriction itself. There's also a memorandum of understanding between Atria and the 300 Committee. That's where the $25,000 comes in and so forth. We worked on that diligently with them for a long period of time. They've been excellent to work with. And so that's where that concept came from, the agreement that they would create the benches and the paths and so forth and so on. And so that's where that has come from. I think it's very important to point out that this is going to be 15 acres of open space, protected open space, very close to the center of town. This is a remarkable opportunity to preserve an open space parcel very close to the center of town. If you can figure out whether there's another 15 acres this close to the center of town, it's open space that we can buy it, fine, let us know. In this case, also, the price is right. This is an integral part of the agreement that was reached by Atria and Natural Heritage, and that is that the 300 Committee is specifically mentioned in the decision from Natural Heritage, as is the compact. So if you had to redo this thing all over, goodness knows what would happen if you had to go back to Natural Heritage. I don't think that's a process that you all want to put Atria through. So it is a rare opportunity to protect such a large parcel of land. There's open space and there's protected open space. 23% of the town is protected open space, and by that I mean it's not available for investment. It's protected by the state. The Crane Wildlife was mentioned earlier. BB Woods, which Mr. Lilly gave to the town. Peterson Farm, which is owned by the town. More recently, the Bartolome parcel up on Sandwich Road was a partnership again. Different partners, but it was a partnership to create open space. And the extension of Monont Beach was a partnership between the CPC, the town, and the 300 Committee. So we have a different partner in the case with Atria, but it's a common process now that we go through getting partners. There are also parcels protected by land trusts here in town that are owned by the land trust, Bourne Farm being a prime example. Riverbend was bought by the 300 Committee a few years ago, and I would not be able to complete this discussion without mentioning T-Ticket Park, which is now underway, which was a joint effort of the donors of the 300 Committee putting up most of the money, but also funds from the town through the CPC and funds from the state for the land grant. So again, this is a different type of configuration, but I think it's necessary to go through the effort to make this project happen from Atria's standpoint and to make it happen from the town standpoint in creating open space. Okay. So thank you.
I had just one other question, and it came up in some conversations we had. There's no mention about parking or availability of parking in your presentation, and I understand there is.
Yes, there is an area in the conservation restriction. It's in this general vicinity here, where we have a reserve right to create parking for up to 4 vehicles. There's also an easement across part of the Atria, the 5-acre piece, to access the conservation restriction property and the parking. So there certainly are provisions for that.
Okay. I would, with the all due diligence, I was the one that had questioned this project, and I would like to say that I got some pushback from some folks out there in the community that are staunch supporters of the 300 committee. But I would not be doing my fiduciary responsibility unless I asked questions. Some of the things we found out were that the property is not in fact valued at $1 million, which was the original interpretation. Keeping in mind that now we're talking about the actual tax loss of 500 and some odd dollars a year versus what would have conceivably been in the thousands of dollars a year. Another issue that has come to light because we held this up and we were able to have a little opportunity to get some bites of the apple was in fact that we found out that Atria made a $25,000 donation to help steward this property in the future. Another issue that came up is that it in fact has an opportunity for folks to park there to be able to utilize this facility. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, what occurred there? So one of the benefits of moving this forward and taking a little time was in fact that we found out that this is in fact a different type of land purchase from the 300 committee. It does provide some contributions from Atria, which help to maintain the property in perpetuity, we would hope, for our next generations. It also is a much less of a loss of taxes, $520 for the opportunity versus what could be conceived as some thousands, and it provides some public access, not just by folks having to walk there, but people could drive there and potentially park a car. So with that being said, I'm glad we had an opportunity to meet after our last meeting. I am in firm support of this conservation restriction in that form of that. Any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Glenn.
So I really appreciate the question about parking. It showed your concern this is about the public access to it here, right? You know what? I always wonder when to stop and when to bring up things. When this was thought through, you think about an office worker, it can cost a fair amount of money if you're going to eat out every day. It gets a little boring eating at your desk every day.
There's nothing wrong with restaurants.
No, there isn't. But every day is what the key. You have to a lot. But here's Homeport across the street. So this for about half the year. This is a very nice opportunity. This is one of the things that we thought about early on. This is a great opportunity for everybody there. They can take a stroll, and they just have to cross a small street. And the kids from the Grassmere area there, they have to watch out for the environmentally sensitive areas, but they'll figure out a way to have fun there that they wouldn't have had if this had been developed in a different area. And, the $500 or perhaps less because the public can go on it is really substantially less than any insurance that would, this really wasn't to avoid $500 in taxes. It had nothing to do with that at all. It just, this isn't the business of Atria to manage places like that. And I think you'll find them very much more involved in the community in the future than they have been in the past even. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I want to make a motion. I would have a few minutes ago, but he wanted to speak, which was fine, to approve this conservation restriction Atria on Gifford Street.
Second.
So may I have a motion and a second? Any further discussion from the board? Any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, approve application for new common victual license. Beer and Boots, Gastro Pub, 285 Main Street in Falmouth. For the applicant,
85 Main Street.
My name is Michael Ricard. I'm the applicant. We have some paperwork for you as well.
okay, great. I'll put that in the file if you'd like.
Hi.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yes, so we're opening, hopefully opening a restaurant on Main Street in Falmouth, Bear and Boots Gastropub. I'm not sure what you'd like to know about
We'd
our
just
history.
like to hear a little bit of what you want to do. You're looking for, this is a lot for the audience out there, which is at home watching this evening. You're looking for a full liquor license, and
Yes,
that's
sir.
really, just explain a little what you want to do there at the location.
Kind of restaurant?
Sure.
Right.
It's a gastropub, so the trend is that the pubs, based off of pubs in London, although unfortunately they've kind of got baseline food, and so about 15 years ago there was a trend to kind of revamp the food that's being served in a comfortable environment. That's exactly what we're doing, taking the pretension out of food, making it a very comfortable environment where you can go in and just be relaxed, enjoy great food. We're chefs. We own 2 bakeries on the vineyard. Our history is with food, not so much with nightclubs.
Yes, this will, as opposed to its predecessor, not be quite as much of an entertainment destination. From what we understand, it was more of a gathering place for bands and whatnot. This will not be to that extent at all.
Right, our passion is food and wine. We want to do the homework, pair great wines, great food, great beers with awesome food. We plan on, Gates is going to be butchering his own meat, breaking down grass-fed beef, grinding it for burgers, pairing it with fantastic wines. We'll have a dozen beers on tap, if approved. So that's really what we're looking for.
Where'd you get the name? Was it?
It's based, our kids, we have 3 children, and our oldest's nickname is Boots, our middle is Bear, and our daughter is Squirrel. So we always say Bear and Boots. The logo that we designed is a bear wearing boots, sitting on a keg, and the squirrel, true to form, is my daughter, is swiping a beer from the keg without them knowing. Definitely rules the
Pestering her
roost.
brothers.
Yeah. So that's the concept. I think it would be very family friendly in the beginning of the night and kind of grow with the crowd as it moves on.
Okay, Pat?
Well, I have eaten in your restaurant in Oak Bluffs.
Oh,
The
and
Sweet Life?
Yes, I was
Gates
the,
was the pastry chef there.
I was the
And you're the pastry
at
chef there?
Sweet
Well,
Life and Slice of Life.
didn't President and Mrs. Obama eat there once when they were
Yes.
there? I remember reading that in the paper. Absolutely fabulous. It was really a lovely place to be. The atmosphere, the food, it was great.
Well,
It was
Gates was the
really
pastry
good.
chef there.
See,
We
and the
worked with,
pastries obviously were out of this world, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Okay, I just need to do a disclosure. I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. A couple of scenarios, the Falmouth Police Department has no problems with the request. From the Fire Department, recommend is contingent on inspection of the building when renovations are completed. And the Zoning Board of Appeals has no problems. And those are the only referrals. So any motion we would make would be subject to occupancy, fire, and Board of Health inspections.
Mr. Chairman, unless anyone has any comments, I was going to make a motion.
Pardon me?
I was going to make a motion, unless anyone else had any more comments.
Doug, do
I
you
just
have-
have one question. Any idea of your projected timetable for opening?
Hopefully September.
Yeah.
We've gutted the building completely. It doesn't have a floor. We were supposed to start framing today, so hopefully it'll move.
I saw the sign on the door, don't go in the front door, there's no floor.
Yeah, it's a long drop down.
Yeah, this was found to be not as structurally sound as we would have liked, so we placed it.
Shoe store, right?
And the-
John Shoe Store, yeah, I just got my
And
shoes.
just one last thing, the hours of operation you're looking for?
Similar to what the Rhubarb was.
Okay, so the license you want till 1 AM or?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve the application for the new all-alcohol common vic license for Bear and Boots, 285 Main Street, subject to the occupancy permit, the fire department inspection, and the Board of Health inspection.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion for the board? Any public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
September.
Next up, approved minutes of April the 13th.
Where's it?
Pardon me, May the 13th, I am so sorry.
I would Move to approve the minutes of May 13th.
So I have a motion, do I have a second? A motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We also have a minutes of May the 13th executive session, and we'll be looked to approve and not release.
Move approval of the minutes of executive session of May 13th and not release.
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, we'll go through the summary of actions. Number one, that's a hold. Number two, request for a special agricultural liquor license, we're going to hold that. Number three, special event yoga series, Falmouth Heights Beach, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 weeks of August. Number nine, request for a special event, Reunion Summer Pal fundraiser, Marina Park. Number five, that's a hold, approved request for one-day liquor license. Number six, approved request for a special event, Ryan Vendetti Scholarship Fund Walk, Shining Sea Bike Path, 8/3/13. Number seven, approve N-Star petition with all 1-4 underground conduit, Wicker Tree Road. Number eight, approve request for use of a donation account fund, Shellfish Propagation Donation Account, and DNR donation account. And then number nine, approve renewal of a seasonal liquor license. That's a hold. Okay, so we're voting on number three, number four, number six, number seven, number eight.
I'll make a,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve 3, 4, 6, 7, 8.
You're trying to get your name on all these
Second.
motions. I like
Well, I'm
that.
trying to do the best. you know,
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, first one, approve request for new livery license, Top Notch Limousine. This was before the board last week. For the applicant, I do have one question. We have from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Top Notch Limousine has informed me that they will be garaging her vehicle at 116 Bernard East St. Jean Drive as originally requested. The only difference is the unit will be occupying the only difference is the unit she will be occupying at that address is a different unit. She will be occupying a new unit being constructed. My question is this.
Yes.
If we approve a license to you this evening, you have to have a place to occupy that license. If it's
He said that I'm able to park there while it's being built. It has about 45 days, up to 45 days until it's completely built.
So you could still have your vehicles parked at this location?
There's a
Okay.
parking lot right outside the building. He
Okay.
said that I'm able to occupy that until it's built.
Okay.
And just work on my mobile phone until then.
Okay, well, that's the key. We need to know where the garage, all right?
Okay, yep, they will be there.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion?
On the license we received today, it lists only one vehicle on the license, but other places it refers to more than one vehicle.
Yeah, I actually currently have 4 vehicles. I have 2 stretch limousines, a sedan, and an SUV.
Well, just FYI for the board, we issue a limousine license, and the actual police department issues the number of vehicles.
Okay.
So in the license I do have here, it does say 4 vehicles, just so the board's information. But I don't know which one you ended up getting in the packet. But the police department issues the actual permits.
Yep.
We issue the license.
And they're all ready to be inspected.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion if anyone so desires.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve the Top Notch Limousines livery license.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you, you guys.
Great, Jill.
Have a great evening.
I'm glad you worked through your garaging opportunities. Good luck.
I'll make you proud.
All right, thank you. Next up is approved request for special agricultural liquor license, Westport River Farmers Market, Peg Noonan Park, just for disclosure purposes, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. So do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the liquor license.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, next up is approved request for a one-day liquor license, Reunion Summer Past Concert, PAL fundraiser, Marina Park on 7/13/13. For disclosure purposes, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. And do I have a motion? There are some restrictions on the motion, on the license. One is a fenced-off section of the area where the alcohol beverages will be sold and consumed. Number two, proof of liquor liability insurance, naming the town as the insured. I would like to make one suggestion on the license, is that the event goes till 10 p.m., the license go till 9 p.m., so 4 to 9 for the license. Typically.
I'll make a motion to approve that, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question. What kind of music is it? The reunion.
Do what?
Is almost 60s?
It's actually two national acts, John Cafferty, Dean Brown, and also, I'm sorry.
It's not the two of you?
My name is Don Cross. I live on 428 Blacksmith Shop Road. The two bands are two nationally recognized acts, John Cafferty, Beaver Brown, and another band, Steve Smith and the Nakeds. And you know, the demographic that we're going to be pulling in is an older crowd, and I think it's going to be a really positive event and great music.
Good, you just advertised it for yourself.
5 piece, 1 section.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I made that motion, Mr. Chairman, to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Those were bands from the yesteryears. Mr. William Sweeney would be rolling over in his grave right now, hoping to get a cover charge as people walk in the door. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. Next up is approved removal of, renewal of seasonal liquor license. Is just for the board's information, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. There was just a little FYI on this license. For some reason, this license got held up in the renewals. We had an application for the transfer of this license, and it was not able to transfer because the original seasonal liquor license had not been issued. So, for some reason, it got tied up in the office, was incomplete. So we're looking to the seasonal renewal of Avenue Seafood Bar and Grill.
I'll make a motion to approve it, Mr. Chairman.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, that concludes the board's business this evening, but before we go to the town manager's report, I'd like to take an opportunity. This is Mr. Bragger's last evening tonight with the board, and I'd like to say to him it's been a pleasure to serve with him, and you've always come knowing your homework and doing your homework. I don't think there's a member of the board that's been more conscientious in attending other committee meetings, and it's a credit to the entire board because of that. And I'd like to thank you for your service personally, and give an opportunity to any other board member if they'd like to say something. I wish I had a little doo-wop music playing in the background as we said our farewell to you. But,
okay.
And Mr. Bragger has graciously donated his
My
lint
lint roller.
brush, his lint brush to the board.
You got the
He's
keeper.
the keeper of
He's
the
got
lint
the- yeah.
brush.
I have a few
Why don't
words
you get a picture of him with the lint brush? It's very important that he, give that over to David.
We had the gnome. I suppose we can have a lint brush.
Gnome and his lint brush.
Was it? I do have a few words I'd like to say, if I
Go right
can.
ahead.
I want to thank every member of this board because it's been actually an honor working with you. Heather, I really appreciate all the guidance I got from you early on. I want to thank all the committees, the Zoning Board, Beach, Solid Waste, Affordable Housing, Council on Aging, and Cable for allowing me to, I guess, advocate for you. And one thing I want to talk about committees is, and I've gone to some others other than mine, is every one of these committee members are very dedicated, given of their time, and it was an honor to work with the committees I did. I also want to thank every town hall employee who I've worked with. They're very dedicated. I know some people in the community feel it's negative to come in here. They don't like to come into the town hall, but I would just tell you, you come in, they're always here with a smile. They're very concerned about the business you need to attend to, and I think it would be a pleasant surprise, Mr. Chairman. Every town hall employee is very dedicated, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention Diane and Carolyn, who make all this possible for us to meet every week, doing all the paperwork that's required. About 20 years ago, there was a politician leaving office, and she mentioned something, and it's sort of something I've lived by, and I know we all have too. When I mention it, you'll understand, is this board has had a lot of contentious issues to deal with. But what she said was, where you find an issue with a discourse, you need to find harmony. If you find errors, you need to work to find the truth. And where you find doubt, you need to get the people regain their faith, and in this case, in the town and in the Board of Selectmen. And that is so true. And finally, I want to thank Julian for, I know we joke a lot about me calling him every day and twice on Sundays, but it was true. And he was very helpful to me getting some issues done that we just normally do not get involved in, but helping out citizens of Falmouth. And I just want to say thank you, Ms. Julian. I'm going to miss it, and I'm sure, maybe you won't, but, and that, I just want to thank everyone who supported me 3 years ago, and my prayers are with this board, because I know you have some very contentious issues still to come and some big decisions to make. And thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Julian, Town Manager's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board is aware, this past week we received notification from the Attorney General's office that the town's nitrogen control bylaw had been disapproved by that office and therefore is not operative. Our pursuit of that, of course, was one of the conditions we were pursuing as part of the town's wastewater treatment plant permit process with the DEP. Falmouth did, of course, move forward fully in good faith on this in collaboration with the Water Quality Management Committee, this Board of Selectmen and town meeting, and I assume that the board may want to discuss this at a future date, at a future meeting, as you might deem appropriate. Also, as the board has requested in your meeting of the past week, I have directed letters on your behalf to MassDOT and our legislators regarding the issue of the Falmouth bus station and depot. We'll stay tuned on that. Also, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this past Wednesday, May 15th, I was pleased to attend and participate in the annual Police Department Memorial Day service at the Police Memorial adjacent to Falmouth Police Headquarters. This is an excellent opportunity to pause and reflect on the challenges inherent to law enforcement, to thank all those involved in protecting our community, and this ceremony, of course, aligns with the National Peace Officers Memorial observance on that same day. As a reminder, next Monday, May 27th, Town Hall and Town Administrative offices will be closed for the observance of Memorial Day. The town's annual Memorial Day parade will step off at approximately 9:45 a.m. from the Village Green to the library for the town's annual Memorial Day ceremony. We look forward to all joining us as their schedules will allow. Also, Mr. Chairman, I want to take a moment as well to offer my congratulations to Selectman David Braga for his dedication and tireless work as a member of this distinguished board. It was certainly has been my privilege as town manager to work with Selectman Braga for the past 18 months of his tenure, and I am very gratified at the number of issues and matters which we were able to accomplish through his dedication, his personal suggestions and observations, and his guidance as a member of this board as well. And as I've noted, I'm very gratified at those many things we were able to accomplish and the great insight which he has provided to me personally and certainly to many others on behalf of the citizens of this town. For that, I'm personally very grateful as well. David, I thank you and commend you for your fine work, and I wish you all the best in the days to come. Thank you for that, and
Thank you, Julian.
that concludes my report.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to individual selectmen reports. I think it's important to note that tomorrow is election day in the town of Falmouth. You know, folks out there, I hope you take an opportunity to vote. That's the one time that you all have a voice in this community. There are some important issues on the ballot, issues that the board has worked diligently to come to consensus and has supported, specifically question number 1 and question number 2. On my behalf, I would hope that the folks out there realize how much time that this board put into those issues and feel that it is the right path to move forward with those issues. And we would hope that you would give a yes vote in regard to both of those issues. But either way, no matter what happens after tomorrow, we'll all show back up here and we'll all try to do the work of this community. And we hope that each and every one of you out there takes an opportunity to vote. Because unfortunately, in other parts of the world, they don't have that opportunity. And we sit with the American flag behind us, and we're always reminded that that's one of the great things that folks lived and died for in our community and our country, to be able to give us that right to vote tomorrow. So I ask you, each and every one of you, to go to the polls, to be able to make sure that you're heard, so you can give us some direction as we move forward as a board. It's important that you do so, and I thank you for that. As a reminder, the board won't be meeting next Monday in observance for Memorial Day. The board will be reorganizing on June the 3rd, which is our next meeting, Monday, June the 3rd. So does anyone else have anything else to say before we look for a motion?
I do.
Okay.
I just want to say 2 things. That I was at the Marine Park on Saturday when the Carousel of Light had their first fundraiser, and it was really heartwarming to see all the people who came. There were over 1,000 people came. We had kept a counter, and a lot of children. I mean, some of the horses from the carousel were there on display, and I think everybody had a really good time. And people were very supportive to the idea of having a carousel in Falmouth if we can only find a place. And David and I ran 3 years ago, and we were 2 of a number of candidates for selectmen, and both of us survived the pack, so to speak. And I've served with a lot of different people who have been selectmen over the years, and I do have to say that I've never seen a selectman demonstrate the care and concern for his constituents as David has. And sometimes we get all wrapped up in other things and in the work that we have to do, but David never allowed that to happen. He always made sure that he stayed connected to the people who supported him, to the people who helped elect him, and to their concerns. And he knew how to get it done. And I think we could all learn from his ability to be able to meet those needs and to know how to to navigate the system, I guess, is the best way to say it. And so I'm really going to miss you, David, and wish you very, very well in the
Thank you very
future.
much, Pat, for your kind words. Thank you.
Anybody else? So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Green Harbor Waterfront Lodging is nestled in a woodland setting on a picturesque ocean inlet. Green Harbor offers so much for a fun-filled yet affordable family waterfront vacation. Enjoy our private boating beach with ramp and dock, free rowboats and paddle boats, oversized heated outdoor pool and kiddie pool. You'll enjoy our attractive waterfront and beachside accommodations. So visit us online at gogreenharbor.com.